if you can make it. Three, that's the magic number. Yes, it is. It's the magic number. Somewhere in this hip-hop soul community was born 3, and that's the magic number. Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Herald Live. I see your request for Moon Age Daydream. Is it Moon Age or Moonage? I think I'd say Moon Age. Moon Age Daydream by David Bowie. Perhaps we'll get to that next week. Hey, everybody, it's Dave Busing, founder and editor-in-chief of comicbookherald.com. Thanks for joining today. As you can see by the image on the screen, if you're here with us live, doing a 3 worlds, 3 moons, or as someone said to me, they weren't sure what it stood for. They thought perhaps it was EMU or EWEM. 3 worlds, 3 moons, the Jonathan Hickman creator and project. I'm going to be here live for the next hour or so with my guest. We got Spike Stonehand. Spike Stonehand on the mic. How's it going, Spike?
I'm doing well. Just a good Wednesday, other than the Texas weather. But
okay, yeah. Is it what is that? Is it hot? What's going on in Texas?
Oh yeah, hot, humid. I think it said felt like was over 100 degrees Fahrenheit today. So it's
yikes!
Yikes! Yeah. We get 3 weeks of fall in Texas, and I enjoy all 3 weeks of them, but they have not come yet.
It makes me appreciative of a Chicago fall. I got to go out and I got to shoot outside on the courts around here today. So it's 80s here, which is, hot this time of year, but nothing to complain about compared to what you're saying. So I'm happy to be able to do that. You didn't ask, but 3-point shot looking pretty good today. I tweaked my left hamstring a little bit, so I had to keep it grounded. But I gotta tell you, I'm shooting the lights out this summer. So if anybody wants to play 3-on-3, I would be happy to do that sometime. 3 worlds, 3 moons, but only 2 hosts, as Vincent points out. Huge missed opportunity. I realized it today as I was like, what am I going to sing? I'm like, I'll do Magic Number by De La Soul. 3 is the magic number. And then I was like, oh, but there's not 3 of us. What was I thinking? Spike? I'm sorry. I should apologize to you. I apologize to the listeners. I should have brought in a third.
That's It's I don't know who is the world and who is the moon here, but we can be 3 each if you'd like.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't want to say you're a satellite revolving around my world. That feels egotistical, but it's definitely of a piece with the attitude I convey here on CBH Live. If you are joining for the first time, these are live conversations. We talk about what's going on in comics. Over the past few months, I've been trying to do deep dives on certain projects. And again, today, we're going to make that 3 moons, 3 worlds. I'm especially excited about this one. I really am, because Spike, you know why we couldn't have a third host? Because no one else.
There's not 3 people reading this. Yeah,
absolutely. No one else is talking about, is reviewing, is covering 3 moons, 3 worlds, and that is baffling. That is wild, because it is a Jonathan Hickman project. Okay, if you are not familiar with the backstory, let's do a little backstory, and then we're going to get deep on this. So 2021 August, there's the exodus of huge big name comics creators, Jonathan Hickman, James Tynion IV. Eventually you get Brian K. Vaughan, Chip Zdarsky, Grant Morrison gets in the mix. You get some huge names as part of the Substack exodus of comics creators going to what was previously and still primarily known as a newsletter platform, right? There's all this funding, apparently. Substack's throwing dollars at them, and they said, come release your comics through Substack. Okay, so you get Hickman. He goes there with Mike Del Mundo, great artist. Mike Huddleston, great artist who did Decorum with Hickman. Del Mundo and Hickman had not released any previous creator-owned works together, but Del Mundo very famous for Marvel cover work, for the interiors of my favorite 2015 Secret Wars tie-in. Do you know this one, Spike?
I don't know which one that is off the top of my head.
Weird World with Jason
that makes
Aaron.
Sense.
Yeah, Jason Aaron and Mike Del Mundo on Weird World. I flipping love that book. So incredible talents and designers and concept artists. And they all go together and they say the next great comics universe starts here. Okay. And that was in August 2021. And at the time, it had shades of Image Comics exodus circa the early night, right? There was kind of talk about
Yeah,
like, is this the big new thing? They seem to have a lot of money, right? Was a big part of it. Like Tynion and Hickman were getting paid. These creators were getting
and yeah,
paid, and it was
I think it
like
was reported like six figures for some of those top guys.
for the grants they were getting, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's like, all right, like, yeah, like get paid. Like you do awesome work, get some money, make your own stuff. I mean, Tynion left Batman, right? And that was like, because for Hickman, it was like he was already on the way out on
that's
X-Men.
what it seems like. Yeah,
Um, Perhaps this was a part of it, perhaps not. I don't know that that's been majorly confirmed or not. But for Tynion, it was like a hard, like, yeah, I'm going to step off Batman and I'm going to release my own stuff. And I think everyone in the world would look at that and be like, that was a good decision. Like he has since gotten funding to like create his own studio kind of thing, and a ton of great books have come out of that. I would say so let's jump ahead, right? That's 2021. That's the big, is this the next big thing in comics? Here we are, 2024, 3 years later. No one is talking about Substack comics. The grants
no,
have dried up. The funds are dry. I would say at this point, 3 years later, the successes would be Tiny Onion Studios, kind of converting it into his own studios. They've launched books like The Deviant and obviously I can't think of any others, but The Deviant's very good.
they did a weird fiction kind of thing and some blue book UFO true facts kind of
There
thing.
was
They
there
call
was
it
a
True Weird.
Department
Yeah,
of Truth spinoff. I love Department of Truth. There was World Tree, and The Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos. A lot of books coming out of the Tiny and Factory, but they're all like fairly traditional in the sense of like these are creator-owned comics that also have physical releases that you can go find in your local comic shop, right? I'm
right.
getting floppies of the Deviant, for example. Um, for Hickman and Company. So anyway, are there any Chip Zdarsky? I would say probably another like relative success story. Was already on the platform. It's kind of just his newsletter and was able to use the funds to kind of power out some creator-owned works like the Eisner winning or nominated, I can't remember, public domain. Able to do some spin-offs out of that. It has his Chip Zdarsky newsletter in shops, which by the way, if you're a local comic shop and you see the ZCN, the Zdarsky comics newsletter, pick it up. They're very fun. They're very enjoyable. I'm always delighted when I see one in my shop. So anyway, BKV is
Yeah,
releasing a graphic novel that seems to be going. It's still going, I guess, is the point. Any others that seem like they're
so yeah, I actually right before our conversation looked up the top rated Substacks for comics. I don't know how if this is based off of subscribers or if it takes money donate pledges into account, but of the top 20 or so, there was really only three that were actually publishing comics on Substack. Three Worlds, Three Moons, the Brian K. Vaughan. I guess Chip Zdarsky has public domain every now and then, so maybe four. And then Nate Stevenson, his comics are much more just kind of slice of life, not like a ongoing narrative. They're very great, they're heartfelt, but it's
that's the only
uh,
Substack entry that's been like among my year-end favorites. To
This,
date.
most of the Substacks are just newsletters. They're just people saying, "Here's what I have coming out left." I'll write a blog post more or less on there of whatever issue I'm feeling.
Yeah.
I know Scott Snyder uses his as kind of like the subscribers get like a writing class from Scott Snyder, and that seems to be pretty successful actually on as far as their rankings go. But yeah, for the most part, comics do not seem to be thriving on Substack
Yeah.
as comics.
And I think we can listen, we can declare it here today. Comics on Substack are dead. Okay. It's not dead is dramatic. And we're going to talk about what's going on with Three Worlds, Three Moons, I promise, and kind of what comics actually exist. And because I think there's still just a ton of confusion. But like the idea of this as the next big comics thing, absolutely not happening.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to have given up that dream, right? Like if they're not funding it in the way that they did, there's not a second wave. I forgot to mention like Tom King and Elsa Chartier, Love Everlasting. That started as a Substack project, right? So whatever. They threw some money at comics creators. It got it off the ground, made some cool books, right? That's all well and good. Three Moons, Three Worlds, or Three Worlds, Three Moons, I guess is what it's actually called. I was just, somebody just asked in the chat, and I had to. So I've got an actual physical copy here, people. We're going to talk about that. The Valors. It does say Three Worlds, Three Moons. The Worlds comes first. Okay, I always get that wrong for whatever reason. What's actually happening there? Are they releasing Hickman creator-owned comics with Mike Huddleston, with Mike Del Mundo, and now with Nick Spencer, who is involved in an entirely unclear role since 2023. Right. Maybe we'll come back to that. The answer is yes, but it's complicated. So at launch, it was clear that this project was going to be different, right? And when I said we were going to be doing this, somebody tweeted at me like, part of me wishes Hickman had just treated it and just made normal creator-owned books. But then a part of me is also like, I'm so glad that he's weird and didn't, because it does make it interesting. But it's like, it's a very kind of convoluted way to go about comics. Spike, what has your experience been with this project? What's your understanding of it? And then I'll kind of share where I'm at.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was definitely very excited, especially as this was initially coming out. I remember before there was even a Substack app, when it was just a website that you would go to or sent to your email inbox. There was a Three Worlds, Three Moons Discord that I was a part of, that former Three Worlds, Three Moons editor Stephen Wacker was on. And I don't really know what exactly happened there, but I got the feeling that when they made the Substack app that you can download on your phone or your tablet or whatever, that they kind of thought that was going to be a community space much more than it turned out to be, and so they kind of discouraged us from using that Discord and shut it down. So I think that there's that one of the things that I found kind of lacking in this Substack experience is that there is no community. There's no way for this to kind of people to talk about this out on the native platform. You have to, we're the only ones talking about this on YouTube, right? But there's no the comics come out and maybe people read them and that's kind of it. There's because it doesn't go to the comic book stores or the bookstores when it has the final physical release, there's no hype outside of the Substack machine.
Right.
So that's kind of been a lot of my experiences, is just reading through a lot of different comics, with most of them very good looking comics, but kind of, just reading it and thinking, oh, that's it, kind of lands with a thud a lot of the time. And there's a lot of reasons, I'm sure, that that we can talk about why individual parts of the Three Worlds, Three Moons experience do and don't work. But that's kind of been my experience, is feeling like something struggling to be born into something, bigger than it actually is. And then just kind of not ever actually getting there.
Yeah.
So far.
It's 3 years in to a very cool idea that still feels like just an idea. Like it's wild how deep into this project it is and how it still feels like it's germinating and not quite off the ground. Let's do this. Let's actually talk about the comics and the narrative that exists, and then we'll come back to kind of what does it mean for the industry? What does it mean for these particular creators, and kind of just the value of it? Because I think, I want to clarify, comics do exist. They are I find it to be a very interesting sci-fi anthology. If you view it that way, right? I think the challenge,
that's how you view it, basically.
is so what the approach to this project has been, not, hey, here's issue number 1, but it's been, we're going to, before your eyes, build our lore books, right?
Exactly.
We are going to build, and I've got, the example here. This is the most recent. So physical editions came out the last month or so. Spike, yours are on the way. Yours are in transit. I've got a hardcover here.
The USPS. Yeah.
Lost in the postal system. I've got a hardcover here of Sourcebook 2. And this is a wonderful, the design on these things, the actual physical product is fantastic.
It's so good.
But I've gotten 2 physical deliveries in 3 years, right? So we'll come back to that as far as the value goes, right? But the stuff looks awesome. But what they do is they're a mixture of comics, short stories, and then also like maps and lore and just like extents, and then like concept art. But like here's 2 pages of extensively detailed, just like all the places in air. Okay.
in both English and using their made up substitution cipher language. Yeah.
And true to Krakoan language, right? You have a ciphered language for everything. Sometimes they will just straight up write everything in the ciphered language, and I'm like, you have to be kidding me. Like, so I think all the
will
thank
not
yous.
be doing the work to translate that. Thank you.
I have
very
not learned
much.
the language yet because I'm not invested enough in the universe yet. I think it's because they put so much effort into concept, into lore, into world building. And it's kind of a fascinating way to go about it. But the reality is, for most of us as consumers of story, as consumers of narrative, as just fans of comics, it means the actual comic book experience is there is technically a core now, but it took a long time to develop. And mostly it functions as a sci-fi anthology. And I think on those terms, it's very cool. Like like it's an incredibly cool project. They have brought in so many of my favorite artists. Like
Yes, yeah.
like you've got
You cannot
Hickman.
fault them. The art, Junie Ba, I'm sure you keep going, but yeah.
No, it's like I think the team, the Three Moons, Three Worlds team, or vice versa. The one thing that I would say is their greatest skill, actually, which I don't know that they realize, maybe they do with Legends, is taste. Like they have really effing good taste in comics creators and in the individuals they want to work with. They brought in like teams to do stories this year in this thing called Legends, and it's the same thing. It's a sci-fi anthology of short stories, but they got Teenie Howard, Phil Hester, Dennis Camp, Stephen Morian, the team behind 20th Century Men, Rich Doak, Alex Cormack, a duo I'm coming to love their comics. Dan Waters and Danny, who did Coffin Bound, Alex Pocknadell, Casper Wingard, who did All Against All, which was one of the better books of last year. They have really good taste. You get a Hickman and James, I don't know how to say his last name, Stokoi,
I think, yeah.
Okay. Sobek, like incredible work. Godzilla, the Half Century War, like this is one of the best living artists, I think, in comics. And you get him doing a short story with Hickman on that level. It has like the potential of this thing is enormous. Like it is bursting. But the challenge that I have is if I read everything that I have in print, literally everything, right? And I've got a bunch of it sitting here. It's like starting 30 new comics. It's
Yeah.
like they're all disparate pieces of this science fiction universe that they built. And the core is still so soundly in its infancy. So I don't know. Am I off base? Are you having a similar experience? What do you think all that?
Yeah, it's I've seen people say it's like reading a role-playing game manual. You're reading your dungeon master's guide, but there's no actual the tie-in books or anything. Or I've heard people I feel sometimes it's like the reading a Marvel encyclopedia, but not having ever actually read the Marvel comics yet. There's all these little bits that's like, oh, that sounds really cool, I want to read that comic, but it doesn't exist yet. It's not like where I can read about, oh, House of M, what's that, and read those comics yet. It's reading a source book for something that hasn't been invented yet. It is a very unique experience in that sense, and I compare it to a lot of the other very fully realized comic book worlds, right? Something like a Hellboy or a Sandman, or even Marvel and DC Comics as a whole. And you see that none of them were made this way, right? They were all made with either a central character or a cast of characters all in their own stories, and a kind of universe built out organically. Like you'd see, oh, I like Hellboy, and we meet Lobster Johnson, and so we can have a little Lobster Johnson spinoff, or oh, he's in part of this bigger organization, And so you read some BPRD comics, and Sandman, you can have a little Death mini 3 issues, or you can have a Lucifer 75 issue run. But we don't have anything like this where the kind of world is being built first, and then they're trying to find the narrative within it instead of the other way around. And I do think that there's something interesting there, but I don't know if it always, as you say, makes for week to week, or more realistically, month to month, even year to year reading experience.
Mm-hmm.
And again, 5 years from now, maybe we'll be thinking, wow, this is the Dune of comics or something. Well, our minds will be totally changed. But right now, it feels like a lot of really good stuff that isn't at all connected. It is almost like you said, an anthology is a good way to think about it. I don't know, when I read of the really cool story that is drawn by James Stokoe, I don't really know how that connects, if at all, to the main narrative such as it exists about was it Tajo Valar? That's the other thing. It's so full of sci-fi names. I think they use a lot of like Esperanto and other. It's so full of just the cheesiest sci-fi names for everything. That kind of
the
it
joke
throws
that
you off a little bit.
The joke that I love, that I'm so glad you're here for, Spike, because again, we're the two readers, and nobody else seems to appreciate this, is every single sci-fi thing Hickman names is the equivalent of Burritoso Suprema. Like it's like
Yes.
it takes something and just kind of Latinizes it, like just very super. Like it is so repetitive in that trick across this sci-fi world. I kind of love that part of it. It's very playful. I mean, I think like on a surface level, if you just said to somebody like, yeah, the core of this book, the Valors, following Tajo Valar, this individual who in the very first comic in Foundations, we see him get lost and he goes on a sci-fi expedition gone wrong. It feels very Annihilation-esque, I would say.
Yeah.
Lost in this mystery world in these academy ruins. We don't know what happened to him. It sets up this great mystery. We've very barely come back to that, but we are getting the stories of him as a child with his family, a family of adventurers. What if I told you Hickman is in his Tom Strong era, right? What if I told you Hickman is doing his Pulp Fiction adventure era? And like, that sounds appealing. He's doing it with Jason Howard. The book looks awesome. Like it's a nice comic. It's just kind of lost. It's just kind of lost amidst like that. So as far as there is a core, it's the family, the Valars. We started with kind of the head, the father of the family getting lost. And now we have very slow progression of him being lost on this magic planet. So like kind of one of the core concepts of the sci-fi world is there's kind of a war between magic and science.
Right.
And like they've kind of got it where we are in a time period where science as epitomized by the Institute, which feels very Fallout 4 to me. I don't remember the name of the Fallout 4 Science Academy. It might also be the Institute, but it's the same kind of thing. And it's like everything, like science controls all, and they're very fearful of magic. They're very like magic doesn't exist, but it's actually there's this one world, Kauso, this moon, that is it's like this is where magic used to exist, and maybe it's back on the rise. That's kind of the premise, but again, like it's all kind of background to building out all this stuff. And then, so we're getting exploration of the Valors and their past. I think if I'm just talking about the Valors as a comic, like it's Hickman, it's Jason Howard. I
think the Mikes do a lot of the design work. So, Mike,
yes.
If you subscribe to the Substack, you'll get when every time they publish a comic, the week after, they'll say, okay, here's Mike Del Mundo's thoughts on designing these robots. Here's Mike Huddleston's thoughts on designing this city. Here's Huddleston's thoughts on designing this alien life form, and they kind of just go back and forth on the design duties. And so that's they haven't drawn a whole lot. They do a lot of the behind the scenes design work, and maybe even some of the writing. I don't know.
That's a really good point, because I'm saying Hickman as the writer. That's not necessarily how this works. It's not credited that way, right? The stories are 3 moons, 3 worlds, and it does not delineate between Hickman, Del Mundo, Huddleston, and whatever Nick Spencer's doing. So like, if a comic is dialogue by Nick Spencer and Hickman has no involvement, I don't know. And that's I have seen comments on the Substack recently, people being like, is Hickman still involved in this project, or am I chasing a waterfall? So was somebody's question. And they were like, yeah, of course. Like, but it's like, it's not, of course, it's actually not that obvious. Now I think if you've read his creator and work before, I think a lot of the stuff, certainly in the first couple of years, feels of a piece.
Hickman themes. With the order
definitely.
and chaos and science and magic and these dueling abstract forces that are in eternal cycle,
Yeah. which totally works, which I find pretty interesting. But again, so I'm seeing the question here, like, and I think this is an important one. Mountain Lions asks, is there a way to buy the physical publication that I showed other than Substack? Okay, here's how I understand it. And Spike, I'd like you to correct me here. So, like, first off, everything is available digitally for sure. I think one thing that I didn't realize until I was prepping to like go back and talk about it here is just how digital focused this initiative was. I mean, so Hickman wrote a
Yeah.
note when he launched this that like he wrote how during the pandemic he came up with a plan to take the entire X-Men line digital. Right, this was back when he was, still very, very involved with X-Men, and he was disappointed he never got to try those ideas. So, like, a huge part of the Substack
Mhm.
appeal, apart from the money and building your own art studio and getting paid to do it, was like a digital first initiative that seems to be of interest. That spirit still lives on in Three Moons, Three World. It is digital first, and then the physical stuff comes months later. Like literal, like again, in 3 years, I have twice received packages with physical comics, and I've backed at the annual level for 2 years, and the Circle, which is the highest premium level. Which at this point, I told you before we started, Spike, like I am fully, um, I am fully brainwashed into the Ponzi scheme. Like
Right.
I'm just I'm hemorrhaging money into 3 million. I honestly like as far as value goes, as far as like money goes, I view it as a Patreon. I
Right.
view it as a Patreon where I can support again primarily Hickman because of the just joy his comics have brought me throughout the past decade plus. But I like all these creators a lot, so I kind of view it as a way just to support for years of work, and then like but yes, I do also like I want to be getting these comics because I think there's so much potential here, and that's where the value it becomes a
Yeah.
bigger question. It's like, are you getting enough bang for your buck? But coming back to the point, the issues Hickman presented in terms of focusing and getting it digital. Number one, because of the solicit previews pre-order hierarchy, we've systemically erased surprise from the industry. This was issue number one, was just being annoyed by having to solicit X-Men comics, which I find very funny. I don't think Three Moons, Three Worlds has done much on this front, actually.
If anything, they feels like they're constantly having to prove to everybody, no, we promised we have stuff coming. Please,
Yes,
don't give
yes,
up on this.
that's
We're advertising. Hey, this is coming. Subscriber rewards for year 4 or year 3. They're
yes,
always hyping you on the next thing. Yeah.
exactly. Like they have not really at all been able to take advantage because the idea, I think, in the mindset here initially was like you'll just get surprised when comics show up in your inbox. And how cool will that be? They won't be spoiled for you with dumb teasers. But the problem with that is they're kind of slow to release, and the structure is so I think kind of brain breaking for folks who are very for myself. I shouldn't even speak to
Yeah.
anyone else. Like definitely for myself, I'm like I would like some actual comics. Like I would. That's how I like process everything, and like
And
that's
to your digital first point too, there's also every single thing that they've released. There's by my count at least 3 different ways that you can read it. They have
yeah, yeah,
each version in a kind of vertical scroll akin to webtoons. That and it's the same thing you're reading, but just with each panel kind of stretched to fit your cell phone screen, and maybe the dialogue is resized. They have it like you're showing a full page of comics, but you can't read that in the Substack app anymore. You have to use either the Panels app, your own third-party
oh,
digital reader
that's a
app.
download and read my own.
Yeah.
That the Substack has this connection
Hmm.
with panels. It is not a good comics reader, even I
No.
wouldn't say, which is why, and maybe we'll get to this at the end. 3 Moons, 3 Worlds is literally building their own app. They had to build their like that's how poorly prepared Substack was to actually have comics. It was a cool idea,
Hmm.
right? It's like let's have these, let's dump them in a newsletter. It's like nobody reads comics
Come
in a
to your
newsletter.
email. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it'll go to your email. Well, no, that's not how we read these things, right? So as a technology platform, they were not ready. They were not ready for that. But you do bring up an interesting point in terms of like if you're a creator and you're delivering, and the first way your audience is going to see them is that panel by panel, almost webtoon scrolling. I have to think that does change, like for Jason Howard, like the way you're laying out, the way you're designing pages. That has to have some kind of influence.
Yeah,
Okay.
it has to work both ways, both on
Yeah.
the scroll and as a page, and that's conceptually, you're limited a lot more, I think, in your to kind of rectangular panels, and you can't do a J.H. Williams the third style,
Right.
designy page, that just wouldn't work in this format.
So that all ties into the second point that Hickman had at launch, which was we're locked into a static storytelling format based entirely on an existing economic model. And what he means by that is he has to write 24-page issues that will all neatly tie up in a Marvel trade paperback or an Image trade paperback or whatever, right? Now, this I actually think Three Moons, Three Worlds is good at. The creators are taking advantage of short form story structure. Some of these comics are 6 pages, some 10, never longer. It's never more. They're gorgeously designed. There's comics interspersed with lore. Like forget data pages for a second. It's like some of these things are like 5 pages of James Stokoe art and then just a straight up lore page that kind of ties into the narrative and then a continuation of the comic. Like that stuff's kind of interesting. There's a newspaper serial. Steve Epting. I have a Three Worlds, Three Moons newspaper. This is cool as hell. It's 16 pages of oversized Epting art, Hickman dialogue. I love this. But again,
very jealous. Yeah, there was a circle. You did the top level subscriber reward. Yeah,
my
you
Ponzi
can't even
scheme
buy
paid
that.
off. This is why I'll never stop getting suckered into this. It would have been very easy to simply release traditional comics, right? It would have, a la Tiny Onion and everyone else in the world. Most subscribers probably would have preferred that, but that's not what they wanted to do, and that's where I kind of can't quit the potential of it. Where I'm like, these trades, when I do actually get stuff, it's cooler than any other book that I look at practically all year. It does not mean it's as narratively satisfying. So Justin asks here, no physical copies for us normies. Here what's your understanding of what is physically available to the non-subscriber?
So I think they keep the highest level circle benefits pretty locked down to just those circle. But the annual rewards, I think you can buy any of those on their, I forget what it's called now. They have an in-universe name for their web store. Emporia.
Emporia is the digital store. And
so in their new app, you should be, they're promising that when they ever make this new app that you will be able to buy, I think, the physical or digital copies in the app and have that work too. But like they have different versions of the source book for the Circle members and the annual members, and the annual member version is available for you to buy. So on Maps and whatever the first one was called, was it just called the source book?
Source book 1, source book 2, like they have different names based on kind of the theme of them.
And you can buy the a kind of single issue version of the very first comics that they released, the Academy and Foundations, Ruins, and then you can buy a shorter version, it seems like, of the Valors. That is what I understand you can buy on their web store right now. And then obviously merch like shirts and hats and stuff.
Here's Foundations. It's a little bit wider than your standard floppy. This is a signed copy, which is another advantage of actually subscribing. Again, I'm not in any way benefiting from getting you to subscribe. Okay, I'm just saying what comes with it. The design is flipping awesome. This first story is really damn good. These interiors are great. You get the data page stuff a la X-Men very early. Okay, so my understanding here is these floppies, Foundations, and the Valor's Preview Edition, which is like the first 4 episodes from Hickman and Jason Howard. These are definitely available via their store. So you can get those comics. Now, I will warn you, if that's all you get for like $40, it's not going to be a satisfying story chunk. I promise you that. It's nice looking, but it's not going to be a satisfying story chunk.
I was just gonna say, if they released it when it was done, if they did like a Radiohead dropping In Rainbows or Beyonce dropping her self-titled album, right? It's like, hey, here's the Valor's graphic novel. It's complete. It's 300 pages of this story.
Yeah.
Do you think that would that be better? Would that accomplish that first goal Hickman laid out? It seems like, but I don't know if that'd actually be a better experience. It's a
Well, so
interesting thought. Yeah.
it is. Here's what I would actually recommend to people. So first off, I don't actually think you can buy the source books. I think you have to be an annual or a circle subscriber, and that's where the majority of comics are. The majority of these short stories, the first source book has about 100 pages. Yes, I counted of comic story. The second one has about 115. Okay, and between them, it's like 12 per, let's say 12, separate short stories. Um, I don't know that you can actually buy those at some point, and even if it's digitally, those have to be made available to a wider audience. What I think you can do, if you're here with us live, you're actually listening. Thanks for being here. And what I think you can do is start a free trial. I think you can do a 7-day free trial and download everything digitally. So like I haven't done this, but I think you could do your 7-day free trial and you could digitally catch up on literally everything that exists. Of which there's the most available digitally because there's a handful of things like they did this Legends project I mentioned earlier, bringing in other creators to work in the terrain, and that doesn't exist in a physical edition yet. Those are some of the best stories they've told. The Dennis Camp and Stip and Morian one, Air Medicine, is flipping awesome. So that would be my recommendation. Try the free trial, download everything, and check it out and see if you dig it. It will make for a very fun weekend, which is what I've had twice now. Right? I don't keep up with these on any regular cadence throughout the years. I just wait until the physical drop. And whenever I get my stuff, then I say, "Oh, I should check this out again." I have seen so many people, Spike. Not so like let's all right. I've seen two people. I've seen two people say that they have not even cracked their source books because they're just kind of like intimidated by like what even is this thing. Zach Dean, co-host My Marvelous Year. I asked him, I did actually ask if we could have a third host. I was like, Zach, are you keeping up with this? And he was like, I have the first source book. I've never opened it. which I don't think is like super uncommon, actually.
Yeah.
It's a very fun binge, but that does also kind of highlight kind of how there's not that much content available in the span of 3 years. I will also admit, and you'll have to tell me if you're the same way, I don't read the lore stuff anymore at all. I just read the comics. What's your approach?
I read through. I did not read any of the lore stuff as it was coming out this past year. I did when you asked me to come on. I was hoping to read it in my physical copy, but since that has not yet arrived this past week or so, I read through the digital version, and there was a lot of skimming of the lore. I will admit, but I did try to get some concept of okay, so where are these interesting nuggets here? What can we like I think that there's long term. They have this idea that they're really attached to, that they'll create a world that's like Star Wars or something, that just anyone can come in, any comics creator could come in and do their Star Wars story, right? They can do their 3 Worlds 3 Moons story,
which is already kind of like, I think the Legend stuff they've done this year, inviting these creative teams that have already done good stuff together, I feel like that's already showing like, oh, like if they keep doing this, they're gonna have at least one cool ass sci-fi anthology a year, right?
Did you read through like the process stuff on how those Legend stories were written? Like I'm curious. Is it like Denise Camp going like, oh, hey, there's this really interesting thing in the source book that I read. Let me do a story of that, or is it the 3 Worlds 3 Moons team saying, hey, we think you could tell an interesting story, like how Tom Brevoort would cast a book for the X-Men title. Like, hey, I think you would do really good telling a rogue story, or what? But okay, no, you should tell a story involving the bank on this one planet, or you could tell a planet using the assassins on air, or all the different things that they have.
I don't know how much direction the team gives them, but I know Dan Waters wrote that he was kind of perusing, like source book type stuff. And he saw the Filth Priests, and he was like, basically like the paraphrasing, but he was like, when I saw the Filth Priests, I was like, I got to do a story around that. So I would kind of guess they're like, hey, you're awesome creators. We would love to have you do this. They work out whatever contract stuff. And then it seems like they get to kind of pick.
That is cool. Yeah,
it is. It's a very cool playground. And that's, I think that kind of speaks to the looseness of this. Cause then you also get into like, well, without a core running series and a book that's like, because it's just comics brain stuff, right? What's canonical? what counts, right? And again, it's like
Yeah.
if you just treat it as incredible sci-fi potential, you're going to get some really cool stories, but you're not going to get east of west. You're not going to get a sustained, focused narrative building out one world, And I think
Yeah.
what's cool about not reading the lore, so why I'm cool is no, what's cool about not reading the lore and just experiencing it through comics is like I learn about the ways that they're imagining the sci-fi universe working through story. That's how I prefer to get those details. I would say a
Yes. Yeah.
standout
I
for me
agree.
is everything that happens on air, where it's like you have these like assassin contests of like excommunicated royalty and kind of this debauched planet. But also it's like the capital of the arts, and just that whole world is super fascinating. And you looking at it, it's like that's one moon of this system where all this stuff goes down. There's so many stories that can just be told on that planet. And when you have Camp and Morian stepping in and doing this tale of a doctor on this, it's like it's an amazing but it's like 20 pages, but it's like an amazing 20 pages.
Right.
You mentioned the process stuff, right? In the question in regards to that, that is a part of what you're paying for ostensibly, is like you get behind the scenes glimpses into how these things are made. You see the Mike's concept art before anyone else, of which I have to think I underrate tremendously. Um, it- Not in the sense that like they're incredible artists. I think they're amazing concept artists, but I have to say getting an email with like, oh, here's an image of lore, completely detached from story, it just does nothing for me. I
Right.
don't, I cannot get attached to it, unfortunately. And my brain just doesn't work that way. Um, anyway, anyway, where were we?
Yeah.
There's so many
I
directions
think
you can go with this. It's so
I
big.
know.
It's so sprawling.
I'm curious too, is if because I'm thinking through how I feel about this, about how did year two for this experiment go. The years are kind of confusing, I guess, because we're in almost 3 years now, full years of Substack existing for
Mhm.
comics, but I guess we're just starting the year three rewards. But regardless,
No, year three just ended. There have been three
yeah,
three
okay.
years of real time have passed, whatever they want to
I,
call
but I haven't got my year two rewards yet, Dave. Where are my year two? No, but I would just think if you asked me 1 year ago to do the same live stream, I don't know how different my thoughts would be. And if
Yeah.
you ask me a year from now, that's what I want to know. Is a year from now, 2 years from now, how different will my thoughts be?
But how
There was
far
a
can they
period.
kick the can down the road? Like how many years do
Yeah,
you get of
exactly.
of potential, right? It's very Krakoa-esque in that regard, right? How many years of
Yeah,
potential before you actually have to deliver here? I mean, so here's all right, so let's get into the value.
because they don't actually put out a whole lot.
They
There's
don't.
not a whole lot of bad. You don't have to deal with the homework comics
That's true.
because there just isn't a lot of. They only put out the bangers, but they're
But it's 6
not as
pages,
common. Yeah.
but it's 6
Yeah.
pages, per month, if that. So here's some back of the napkin math for you. From 2021 through 2023, I subscribed to the annual level for 2 years. That's $80 a year, $660 a month. In 2023, I said screw it. I fully committed. I went to the Circle for $250 a year. That's over $20 a month. Now that's my own poor financial decision, but we're here. Pretend I stayed at the annual. That's $240 over 3 years. Okay. I'd
Hmm.
have print editions of Foundations, which I showed. That's the 22 page. Where is it? This guy. And I'd have the 2 source books, a couple signed prints, maybe a compass, a couple knickknacks, right? So in terms of physical comics, which is the bread and butter here, that's almost 100 pages of comics in source book 1, 22 in Foundations, close to 115 in source book. So I'll round up to 240, let's say, pages of comics. $1 per page of comics. Okay.
Wow.
Now at that rate, your local comic shop would mean a single issue costs $25. 22, which is probably what Marvel wants. I think eventually they'll get.
They're pushing for that. Yeah.
Eventually they'll get there. But yeah, for $240 in the direct market, you'd have a near 50 issue run of comics. So if you just look at dollars per comics, there is no 50 issue run that has developed over these 3 years. They are not even close to that, right? And that's not super what I expect necessarily, but I understand why folks would be looking at it and being like, can someone just wake me up when there's actually a run? You know, can someone wake me up when there's a few
Yeah.
graphic novels to read? And I think that's what makes it very challenging. I don't know.
Even in different parts of the year, I can feel my excitement wane and grow. Like there was a period, in the past year or so where every week we were getting a new page of Academy, just that the one that they collected in the newspaper, and a new couple page chapters of the Valars. And that was, for me, that was the most high I was on this concept, was when we were getting both of those every single week for 3 or 4 months.
It felt like it
It
was
felt
kicking
like.
into more of a standard, like this. There's a regular cadence to release now.
And I wonder if like, okay, what if you hold back your pages of the Valars so that you get, here's a chapter of storytelling. We bank enough that we can literally release. You just have 52 units, and every week you got a new unit, whether it's a page of Academy while Steve Epting has time to draw that, and then you switch over to the Valars and you get Jason Howard's drawing a few chapters. I I have to wonder if there was some sort of more regular cadence to it, and not, it feels like kind of a lot at once and then a kind of a quiet lull for a few months and then a lot at once. And if that would affect people's perception,
I mean,
people would be more excited and subscribing and talking about this.
yeah, I think you're onto something. Because when you say a quiet lull, I mean, honestly, that's polite. I mean, Hickman has not written a single released 3 World 3 Moon comic in 2024. It is almost October. Every comic that has actually been released digitally this year has been a part of the Legends project, which again, I think is really cool. It brings in other creators, but 99% of your audience signed up because they like Hickman and the Mikes, and they have not followed up on the Valars, which was the ongoing series through 2023. Steve Epting has been off on the Academy, which again was a page a week thing anyway, which again, put in this newspaper format. You tell me I can sit on my couch and read Hickman and Epting comics with a giant newspaper like I'm a 50s dad? Come on, I love that. But it
Ignore
hasn't.
your kid, ignore your wife,
I got the Bears game on. They're blowing it. I know how that's going, so I'm going to focus on the newspaper. It's great. I love it. It hasn't released a single page in a year. Okay. I don't. That's where if somebody asked me like, should I sign up? I would say no. Like I really like what has been released. I love the potential of it, but unless you're looking at it as I kind of just want to support these creators that I've appreciated, and you're looking at it as I want bang for my buck, which most people should, right? That's how we evaluate purchase decisions. It's not good. It's not good value for your money, I don't think. Now, Paul here in the comments says, not trying to justify my purchase, but that compass is surprisingly high quality. So I may have disparaged the compass unfairly. Nonetheless,
I'm trying to think of what else. They also had that little interactive game. I played through that 3 or 4 times when it first dropped, and nothing else. It's if you don't remember, it is it's the quiz that you're
the 13
taking.
questions.
Yeah, the 13 questions that they part of they take it and assign you your role within the institute in universe. And the art looked very good. It was kind of like a cool throwback to those old text based games like a Phoenix Wright or whatever. It was pretty cool, but I played through it 3 or 4 times, tried to get a few different results, and then was like, I did the back of the calculator math on, okay, how many different possible decision trees are there? How many different possible outcomes can I get? And it's like, this is too much for me to actually do by myself. I'm not gonna sit here and try through every combination to see if maybe there's some hidden secret. And I feel like if there was, to tie it all back to where I started, I feel like if there was more of a community of people digging through, trying to find these secrets, if there was a mystery that kept people engaged, it doesn't feel like there is. Say what you will about the direct market. There's a lot of criticisms you can have about it, but there is the fact that you have to put out a comic every single month keeps people engaged and keeps people hooked. And, it makes there's a reason why on, when they made those long TV shows that had 22 episode seasons. Every episode kind of ended with a cliffhanger. They gave you some reason to come back next week.
Sure.
And I feel like that's ultimately that is very much lacking with Three Worlds 3. It feels kind of like a little treat, like, oh, I get to look at some cool art, and at the end of the year, go back and look at my rewards.
Comics, like like it's not. I mean, I just pulled up this page here of Havo, this demon, this trickster, the sloth demon. Like the design,
such a cool character. Yeah,
yes.
they're making a little plushie of him, I think, if you subscribe to the Circle. But it just there's not that thing that keeps me coming back every week. That's my, or it feels like icing on the top of the cake, but I'm not getting a lot of cake.
Yeah, right. It's a once a year check-in for me, and I think that's a strange experience. If it was like, we're going to go to the mines, we're going to pump out a graphic novel once a year, that would make more sense. That would register. I'm like, yeah, that's probably what Daniel Klaus is doing it at a 5-year cadence or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's
or Brubaker and Phillips.
Yeah,
just hey, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's something I can understand. I mean, I think it's hard not to be not even critical so much as just like questioning or skeptical of the output, because
or confused.
Because it's really astonishing how little attention this has 3 years later. Again, Jonathan Hickman is the biggest name in direct market comics. Ultimate Spider-Man is the biggest seller of the year. Aliens vs. Avengers is going to be a bestseller. The first issue, the second issue will probably be the same. There are virtually no reviews of his creator-owned work for the past 3 years because it's locked in this confusing project. and I don't fault them for trying something. I like that they are, And
I think he has had kind of, I was a huge East of West guy when that was coming out. And I remember reading that he wrote that very much in that kind of old school Marvel method style, right? He found an artist that he really loved in Nick Dragotta and was like, all right, I'm going to just give you enough writing wise so that you can shine as an artist. And I don't know if that hands-off approach, if that he's taking the same thing here, but just is not, of the direct market stuff, it feels most comparable to in kind of reception and in, a lot of the content really is God. So it feels much more like that than it does Ultimate Spider-Man,
I like Three Worlds, Three Moons stories exponentially more than I like God's. Truly.
That's fair.
Truly.
That's fair.
I really, it's of a very high caliber. And again, like we didn't do the rundown, but I mean, Junie Ba, James Stokoe, you got Frank Martin colors on a bunch of these. Jason Howard's doing great work. You got Jeremy Hahn, Christian Ward. Did you see like?
Oh yeah, the Christian Ward one. Yeah, or even that it felt like things were really clicking for me that one time where they revealed the giant whale that they like ride through space on. I was like, because that was a surprise that they held back, and I was like, oh, I see why you're accomplishing all these goals that you set out here.
Yeah,
and they have hardly done that at all since then. I've not felt that same wow.
To traverse this solar system, it's very dangerous. You have to ride on the back of cities on the backs of whales. They call them like Vogiganto or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
but they're very similar to like to like the whales the Brood capture in like X-Men, like design wise. Yeah, but cities on the back and they're space whales. Yeah, it's like there's no shortage of ideas. There's no shortage of potential. The word I keep saying. There is an actual shortage of comics. So I mean, here's the question. I mentioned Hickman and the 3W3M team has not released any comics this year. Okay, I would say that's a problem. Last year marked the exit of Stephen Wacker. So there was kind of a moment, like I think like 2022 into like 2023, there was kind of a moment where it was like, oh, this is going to become a real big deal. And part of that was when Wacker joined. Now, Wacker was a longtime Marvel editor. Amazing Spider-Man. He was the editor of Hawkeye by Matt Fraction and David Aja. He then left to do like some big-time job at like Marvel Animation. I think he might have been like chief creative officer or I'm probably getting that title wrong. He steps in to be editor-in-chief of this project. And there was a real sense, at least in my mind, of like, oh, this is legit. This is a
Yeah.
real comics publisher now.
He was doing video interviews a lot. He was putting out what I think, 3 questions, 3 answers. It felt like every week. It did really feel like that. Things are picking up speed and momentum when he was editing all this line.
Yeah, and then he's out within a year, takes a different gig. Molly Mahan comes in as editor. No, this is no like, oh, her editorial skills can't measure up. I couldn't even possibly evaluate that. It's more of kind of a perception thing, and then Nick Spencer comes in, and again, this completely nebulous role that I don't understand and has never been addressed.
Yeah.
And it's, to me, that's kind of a moment towards the end of 2023 where it's like, oh, are they like, have they lost steam? Like, have they as a project? I'm worried it's just going to fade out, I guess, is the thing. And
Yeah.
it's still so heavily in the potential phase that I'm like genuinely worried it's just going to like fizzle and just be this weird like sci-fi anthology that never went anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, that's my fear.
How many Hickman creator-owned projects have not been finished? I talked about how much I loved East to West, but that's one of the only ones. And I'm sure what you're about to mention is the very recent posted on Instagram of the artist of Black Monday Murders. Can you play the link on his name right now? Tom Coker. Right. That he said that he has drawn that series. Both you and I think that it's one of Hickman's best works that we have. As far as a incomplete series can,
I would say if it
great.
completes, it will be his defining creator-owned work.
Yeah,
and I love East to West. I do.
It was one of the first comics I remember that got me buying floppy comics. It was.
Yeah.
And Tom Coker said, he had health issues. He had to step away after, I believe, issue 8. There's planned another 4 issues, and he posted recently that he has drawn all of the scripts that Hickman has given him, that he drew, I believe, issues 9 and 10, but anything beyond that, he doesn't have any scripts for. Yeah. And not throwing any names or casting shade, but that he can't draw what he doesn't have. And it does feel like, I don't know, is that just something that Hickman, as he's grown older, he's busy doing redefining various Marvel publishing lines. He's got a kid now, I know, that he probably wants to spend a lot more time with, and those are all valid things. But if he's not finishing the 2 or 3 issues of the Black Monday Murders, how much more is he not going to finish the 3 Worlds, 3 Moons that doesn't have that critical acclaim, that doesn't have people constantly asking on Instagram, hey, when are we going to get more issues of Black Monday Murders? Right. No one's asking, when are we getting 3 Worlds, 3 Moons? No one's asking that on Instagram.
It's just us, and that's the problem. Okay, so on that,
the difference being we have paid subscriptions for this, so there might be they might feel some obligation to deliver something.
Yeah,
but right. I don't know what
that's the pressure.
Look like, yeah.
That's the pressure they feel to actually deliver. Which is good. You need that mechanism, otherwise it just doesn't go anywhere. Regarding doesn't finish things as kind of a legacy of Hickman, I think that's a little overblown. I think like Manhattan Project, you could go either way. Is Manhattan Projects unfinished, or did it just not expand itself into because I interviewed Nick Patera when I was doing Hickmania. And he was like, we were going to do, 4, because they did that Beyond the Sun and Stars mini after it ended.
Right.
And he was like, we were going to do that, 4 issues, but kind of for each of the core characters, so there's going to be an Einstein one, there's going to be a Fermi one, or whatever they were. And that didn't happen. But Patera was like, I'd love to do that. Like, it, that bought me a house, essentially, right? He was very honest about it. So anyway, that to me is nebulous.
Sure.
Is it not? Yeah. It's like it could keep going. Selfishly, I want that. East to West finished. X-Men did not. Is that a Hickman decision or a Marvel decision? That one, again, is kind of up in the air. I think it will retain an unfinished perception regardless of who is at fault or made that decision ultimately. Black Monday Murders, to me, is the kicker. If Black Monday Murders does not finish, it will be a sentence in the 4-issue summary of Jonathan Hickman's comics career, that he did not finish what could have been a defining work. I don't know the truth, obviously, between the back and forth of are two of these issues done, and we're just two scripts away from finishing. And obviously, like
Right, yeah.
this is a creator who also like God bless a creator who's like, I will finish this thing when I'm damn well ready. Like I got no problems with that. Hickman and Dustin Weaver released an issue of S.H.I.E.L.D. 7 years after.
That is true.
They released
And
the
it was
final
a great
issue
issue.
7 years later, and it was good. Is that ridiculous? Like in the direct market? Absolutely. But you know, if they released the 4 issues of Black Monday Murders a decade later, you know, I think that's crazy. But also, like, I don't know, it's their work. Like they can release it when they want.
And
I just
who
think,
knows? You know, he might have changed in the however many years it's been. You know, Jonathan Hickman might
absolutely,
not be
you're not
like in the
space.
same headspace. Yeah.
I do think it's a thing that as fans, like selfishly, I just want that book to end and have the satisfaction of a conclusion. But as a creative person, it is like I'm not in the same headspace I was 5 years ago in terms of the types of things I want to create, right? And I'm sure you know he and Coker aren't either, right? I don't know. He hasn't written a comic like that outside of House and Powers since. You know,
Yeah.
like I don't. Does he necessarily want to revisit that? I don't know. So anyway, but that reputation is there, whether it's true or not. And if it happens with this, with 3 Moons, 3 World, it's going to be bad. It's going to be really bad because it's going to be heavily unfinished, I think is the problem, right? With Black Monday Murders, it's like that's 8 amazing issues. We know it was supposed to go 12, but like Tom Coker did get sick. Like there was a genuine, like, what are you supposed to do about that? Like, you know, kind of thing.
And those issues stand as you know, solid units, but each one felt like an event unto itself. Yeah,
they do. Yeah. There's a, which is wild, right? It's like the story's incomplete, but it's like those are such satisfying chunks in and of themselves. I'm like almost forgiving of that. 3 Moons, 3 Worlds. It's like, and even the tenor of like, even the tenor of the way they talk about it in their own posts. It's like, here we go. This is we're about to get started. Like this is our best year. I'm like, we've had 3 years. We've been doing this for 3 years. How are we still in the kickoff phase?
Right? Are you? Yeah, we haven't even gotten. It's not unfinished. It feels almost like not unstarted, but you haven't gotten to Act 2 in your 3-act structure kind of thing, right? We're still winding up.
And I'm very I am genuinely really excited to see that, like, and what that could be. Like, I'm fully bought in. I'm worried the way the past year has gone that it's like, are we actually going to get to that stage? Because guess what? The Substack money's like that. They're not getting a grant like that again. They're not just going to get an infusion of like that was a miracle deal.
Well, I don't know if you noticed, but I remember way back when it first started too, that they would tell you how much money these various Substacks were receiving, and I
I noticed that was gone
because I think of a lot of controversies around how much money various right-wing Substacks were getting. I think that was part of when they took the dollar signs off. So we don't even know how many people are subscribing anymore. How many people have canceled their subscriptions? How many people?
Well, we know it's 30,000 subscribers. I don't know that means they're all paying. Or to what degree it's still, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's still the #1 comics.
It is, yes.
For what that's worth. Okay, we got a question here from Sketched. So I imagine
it's a good question.
David Harper.
If you saw me laughing earlier, I saw that question pop up.
It is a good question. Yeah. David Harper, Off Panel Podcast, Sketch. Highly recommend you check those out. Some of the best in the comics biz. What does finished even mean for 3 Worlds, 3 Moon? Okay, here's my thoughts on this. Number one for me would be the Tajo Valor and Valor's family story has a narrative structure that at least gets us to the point where the tease of Tajo's daughter going to find her or find him on Kauso, that we at least get that story, right? I think that to me is our core of this universe. I think that narrative, there should be some version of like, you read Foundations, and then you read the Valors, and then you read the Epting serial, and then there's a sizable chunk of story that has to come after that connects the dots. So I think that to me is like sequence number 1 is the Valor story is told efficiently and effectively. Beyond that, there's not a single core narrative that's been started. Everything else is short stories that give you little tastes of this world, and that to me could just go forever in a Legends format.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I would say that the story of the Valors, that's our core. That needs to have a beginning, middle, and ending of some sort. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, what was the first image that we saw from Three Worlds, Three Moons? It was the Tajo Valar in his suit as it slowly became more and more hybridized with the organic life form on this planet. We have not gotten to that point 3 years in to the narrative. We
Yeah.
don't know how he kind of evolves into this thing. I think that, like you say, that is from the beginning. Anybody that's been hooked on this series, that's what they've been wanting, is a continuation of that story. It is to the extent that there is a spine to Three Worlds, Three Moons. It is that story. And I would assume, given kind of the way that the world is set up, this kind of conflict between science and magic, between order and chaos, is exemplified between two of the moons. That to me, the conclusion to the story has to be kind of pushing past this era of science and into maybe not another era of just total magic domination, but some sort of moving into the next phase of the universe. And then you can kind of tell stories that are set in this past, the world that they've created, or stories that are, I don't know, post Star Wars, when the rebels have won and defeated the Empire, kind of thing. Like what comes next, and that you can tell stories at any point in the different narrative. I think would be a cool element of a completed, quote unquote, Three Worlds, Three Moons experience, that we get all the different stages of this big universe, galaxy spanning story, and we know exactly what's going on at any given point, such that people can come in and tell their stories. It's set in the far past, set in the future, set in during a moment of cataclysmic change. That to me would be, I am satisfied with the Three Worlds, Three Moons experience, and anything else beyond this, would be just a fun treat.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. But it's, I think just settling in to kind of, here are a handful of core narratives that, listen, I love that it's doing its own thing. I love that it's unique. And there is a certain there's a real I heard him first indie band kind of coolness to this project. Some of it is just sort of you literally have to buy in. So how cool is that? I suppose not very, but there's an exclusivity
kind of thing.
Yeah, there's an exclusivity to again, we've been joking that we're the only people. Obviously we're not. They have 30,000 subscribers. These are very popular comics creators. But there's a rare exclusivity where, if this thing does coalesce into something cohesive and grand and some wonderful stories, it's going to be really exciting to be I was there, I saw it happen, and I understand it because I've been following it for once a year for 3 years, right?
You'll feel like they pulled off a magic trick, right? Like while we were watching them the whole time, kind of thing.
Yeah. So again, I cannot quit that potential, because if it happens, it will go from this odd curiosity to my favorite thing in comics. I mean, because again, when they sit down to make comics, they make some of the best comics.
Yes,
they're just not
great art, great design, interesting concepts. It's all there on paper.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're bringing these interesting ideas to life, and again, these source books are not short of I think genuinely fascinating, world building universe ideas. They are not, yes, I might be able to say, oh, that's kind of like this thing, or that's kind of like this thing. But if you do that 6,000 times, it's not kind of like anything anymore. Now it's just your, now it's just your sci-fi universe that, again, and it's you can kind of tell any kind of story in this. We've got magic stories on Cowcell. We've got assassin guilds on air. We've got royals on ferry. We've got the one thing that actually I understand the least is whatever this war planet is. So one of the first stories was sisterhood or something, and it's these old women having lunch, and there's just like a bloody, like the bloodiest battle going on all around them. I have no idea what that planet is, like what that I missed something in the lore. Maybe this is maybe this
Yeah,
is
yeah,
why I
yeah.
should be reading these things. What do you know what's going on there? What is that planet?
Man, that was so long ago. It does feel like I don't remember off the top of my head
Okay.
what was going on that planet either. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Was
Okay.
it? Yeah.
But you've got, you've got all these interesting religions, you've got all these gods, you've got Al Ewing ideas for religions, you got Teeny Howard ideas for magic, you got Rom V ideas for finance. Like the thought that has gone into this
Yeah.
thing. I mean, I do think that's part of, like, just on a how do comics get made level. It does really emphasize and highlight, outside of this experience, like, how much thought these individuals can put into these works. I think a lot of times,
For
I saw
sure.
this. I saw this recently. Steve Orlando was, this is like totally disconnected, but kind of connected. I'll come back. Steve Orlando was like having at it with some Twitter people who were yelling at him about Scarlet Witch, and one thing he wrote, and he was understandably disgruntled. But one thing he wrote was like, "I guarantee you, I have put more thought into this than you." And I'm paraphrasing. That's probably not exactly how he wrote it, but it was like, it's like, yeah, like, come on, like, I think all of, and I do this
Right.
too, right? But all of us are sitting here like thinking, about this for 12 seconds and being like, here's how this character should act, or here's how this thing should happen. And it's like, the people actually writing these stories, like, they have lore books they've built, about how
They
these
have
things
some
could work,
experience
and
with
some
the
experience.
market. Yeah.
Yes,
How
and
that
some
works. What
experience as
stories
well.
do and don't function. Yeah.
Totally.
And I wonder too, I would really be interested. You've mentioned multiple times that the longest of these short stories we've gotten in so far in Three Worlds, Three Moons have been, 20 pages or so at most. I think the longest probably would be the Valars, but, most of the short stories are in the, 8 to 16 page range.
Hmm.
I do think it would be, I think that would be kind of a proof of concept if we could have someone come in and do a regular, longer form narrative within this universe. I think that would really sell people on if we had something that had a longer than short story, beginning, middle, and end, and it ends conclusively in a way that is, the way the short stories do. I think that something like that could really go a long way towards, again, thinking of all these other creator owned universes, right? Like I mentioned Star Wars earlier. If there is this world's equivalent of, the old, the Thrawn books or something like that, right? Where it's not the main narrative, but it's a side narrative, and it tells a complete story, and it goes on for longer than just 12 pages. I think that it has characters
Yeah.
that we can fall in love with, and we know where it fits within this broader scope. I think that would go a long way. Yeah.
You know what? You just said a word that we have barely said in an hour plus, which is character. And
That is true.
it is the single clearest thing we are missing in this entire experience. Obviously, there's one name we said. We got Tajo Valar. We got his family. Some characters slightly getting developed in the Valors, I suppose, but generally, yeah, we meet people for 6 pages, and it's story designed to tell you how the world works in very exciting ways sometimes. But I do not have an attachment to any individuals in this world as of yet. So that is where, when I say that Valar's ongoing kind of needs to have, like, that needs to be the core, that needs to be the engine. Um, we need to start caring about some of them. I like the relationship between Tajo and his family. I think from
Mhm.
what I've read of that, but definitely there's not quite enough of it. I do also think if that book, if the Valors dropped as a regular ongoing in a comic market, and it was Hickman and Jason Howard, um, it would be the least of any of Hickman's creator-owned works, and that sounds, probably more insulting than I quite want it to be. But I think it would not measure up to a Black Monday Murders.
Mhm.
It would not measure up to East of West. It would not measure up to Nightly News or Red Mass from Mars. And I think that but it fits as a piece of, like, kind of just like, listen, we're just trying to give you something solid. like
Yeah.
like we're trying to give you some footing. But again, then it's like, okay, but compared to everything else you've done, this isn't, it's kind of East of West light, I think. um So that's a challenge. That's a
Yeah,
challenge as well.
it's a very strange conundrum that they found them. So I would agree that just what we have so far is not up to Hickman and Co.'s usual efforts, and I wonder, yeah,
I don't think it's a lack of effort. I want to be clear. Like, I don't think it's like, and I know that's not what you're saying, but
no,
you just said the word, and I think it's a perception, which is like, oh, maybe they've bailed on this, or like, are they even
no,
doing
yeah, I don't
stuff?
think
I
so.
don't
Yeah,
think it's that. I really don't.
my point is, I wonder if we had seen, the work that Jonathan Hickman and Nick Dragata put into East of West. I don't know if it would be 3 years worth of work to get to the point that we were now, but it
Mm,
might have been a significant amount of time, and that might be just part of the experience here, is that we're seeing how the sausage gets made, and
yeah.
realizing it's kind of boring. It's a lot of work that is not appealing, and we would just kind of want the end hot dog. We don't need to see, and
Yeah.
that's entirely possible. But we just don't have anything to compare it to. We don't have any documentation on how long Jonathan Hickman spent creating the world of Black Monday Murders. We just have the 8 issues that we have, and
Right.
so yeah,
Right. Well, even House and Powers, obviously, and the whole Krakoa experience, like those are ideas that were presented in a Marvel pitch meeting in what, the early 2010s, and then sat and germinated and years of
wow,
experience.
yeah,
Like sometimes things take a long time to gestate. I love your analogy there. Yeah, it's like maybe watching some of this is just really boring, and like actually we're very simple as readers and kind of just want the end product, and don't necessarily need to see all the work that goes into it, as impressive and kind of interesting as it is. I mean, there are moments like following the process stuff, which I love, just knowing how comics are made. Like Stephen Morian wrote a really great post about how he and Camp made Air Medicine, and then Camp chimes in at the end. But just seeing like how he roughly digitally sketches out thumbnails, prints those, puts them oversized on a board, literally paints with acrylics and watercolors and everything on top, and just seeing that go from these rough digital thumbnails to this incredible Air Medicine art, and then kind of the back and forth with then how Camp learns and color, like that stuff's cool as hell. So
yeah.
there's value in kind of in those moments, but then it's fleeting, because like Casper Wingard wrote a similar process thing, and it's like it doesn't say anything. he's like, I started with thumbnails, and then it went to inks, and then it
Yeah.
went to script, and it's like, okay, that's how
Well, that's what
comics
I've
are made.
always thought is funny, that the obsession with this kind of behind the scenes stuff is that sometimes the people that are really good at creating works of art, whether it's narrative or visual or anything, are not always the best people at talking about the
Yeah, for
said
sure.
works of art.
Yeah.
Those are two different skill sets, and I think we ask sometimes the creators to explain how the muses work, and there is no explanation sometimes. But it is. I'm glad that it does occasionally. We do get those glimpses into a really cool and interesting process. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it pays off at times. Um, all right. Two questions here before we wrap this up. Number one, do you think there's potential for so like the one thing I do love about this is, in addition to the potential of the stories, it's like they are trying things, and it is kind of fascinating just to watch, like, does this work, does this not, like in seeing individuals take that chance. I do kind of like, I like that. You mentioned the Radiohead Bandcamp thing, but it is like you reach a certain level of success, you can experiment more easily.
Hmm.
And I think, not just putting these out as floppies in the shop and doing something differently, I'm very interested in. They're creating their own app, the Three Moons Three, or the Three Worlds Three Moons app. The apps that exist for reading comics right now are Marvel Unlimited, DC Universe Infinite. I mean, I guess Comixology still exists, but like
Yeah.
it's not even close to what it was. I pretty much exclusively at this point read through um, downloading PDFs and CBZs and reading a comics reader. Hoopla I use a lot, which is
Hmm.
not amazing as a comics reader, but on a tablet it gets the job done.
It's the best
Libby,
one, though. Let me tell you, of the
yeah,
digital like library apps.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love it, and I download through Libby a fair amount, and then those go to Kindle. Um, Point being, there is space, I suppose, for like a new reader and a new app, but one that is tied just to a universe with a limited selection of material. Uh, is a bold play, Cotton.
It is fascinating.
Real
I
bold
agree.
play.
The
Yeah.
amount of money that is got to be going into programming this alone is astounding, and it kind of is like just for this. Yeah.
What do you foresee for this? Do you think
You
it's a good
know,
idea?
I think that it could be a good idea, but I do think that to me this is if this works, it's a proof of concept for what could be done in the digital comic space more than it actually is useful for Three Worlds, Three Moons in particular.
Mm.
It is a hey, look, we programmed this app that you can read in all these different ways, and it has built-in web store integration, and it does XYZ. And they could then sell that to like a venture capital company, or they could even have other comic universes come to them, and they'd like take a cut of every sale on the app, kind of thing. Like if I don't know, the Black Hammer universe or Hellboy comics, and you just kind of pick what comics universe on you want to read on your app, and it has it all in there, nice and easy for you to buy. I don't know, I could see it having some function there, but it does seem like so much work for just Three Worlds, Three Moons. And again, maybe they have big plans for this next upcoming year, and it'll make sense to have an app once they drop the secret big ultra plan that makes it all justified. But from what we have right now, I don't. Who's buying the stuff on this? If I know about this app existing, I'm already subscribed to their Substack and paying them money. Nobody else knows about this app. So who's the target audience here to actually buy products on it? That'll justify the cost.
Similarly skeptical. So like my first reaction was like, oh, cool. But then I thought about it and I was like, it's not hard to download a PDF or CBZ. Like I am not.
There's tons of third-party apps that work pretty well, like at organizing your library, your digital comics library. Yeah,
it's a pain for storage a little bit, like on my tablet. Like I don't keep. And anyway, these are minor inconveniences. Like these are minor inconveniences to solve with what I would say is a sledgehammer of an idea. Here's the thing about apps: very expensive, very hard to maintain. I guarantee you, the first several weeks of this app, they're going to be inundated with complaints and technical questions and things not working. That's just how apps go. At listen,
we're paying to be the alpha and beta testers, essentially. That's the other thing about it.
Pepto Bismol here in the chat says a new app is hubris. I have to agree. I get what you're thinking. I understand the desire to have it, especially the way the Substack thing has gone, where they launched on a digital platform that does not have any capable comics functionality. That must have been very frustrating. That must have been very annoying. They must have been getting so many complaints about that.
Even the idea of having an index page of here's everything that we have published in the order that you can read it. That didn't exist at first, and I think that they kind of had to push Substack to allow them to have that.
Yeah, right. Because everything gets just lost in the latest post, which of course they have. Like Hickman is, I would say, probably second in the world of reading orders. I would say like it's Comic Book Herald, then Jonathan Hickman. Like he's an individual who understands people want to read things chronologically, right? They have a reading order, they have an index. They made it easier than any other Substack to follow what they have and what exists. Listen, God bless them. I hope it's good, but I don't at all understand this.
I think the only other sleuth thing I could think of is if they are looking to separate, if they're looking to move away from Substack, having an app that is controlled by them could grant them some freedoms, but it does seem like a lot of money for not a lot of return there.
I mean, here's the glass half full version of this that I like a lot. It implies a longevity to the project, because you're like, all right, if you're going to build this thing, you got to fill it out with a catalog. So that implies like, listen, we are here to stay. We are going to be uploading comics all the time. Great. That's everything everyone wants. That sounds amazing. And then the other part of it, kind of what you were tapping into, is like, what if there's a second shoe to drop here and they're smarter and better investors than we're giving them credit for, and they're going to start pulling in other projects, right? And now, can you shoehorn in other Substack projects, other cool universes, like you said? Can it be, I don't know, can you do a webtoon canvas thing in the Three Moons, Three Worlds universe, where you've got your concept, and it's like, because that's our whole thing, is like, we want this
Yeah, that's
concept
true.
universe to be out there. We want it to be a jam band, is what they said at the early days, right? Everybody can come in and play. It's like, all right, how do you make that a reality outside of just having amazing taste and contacting all the best creators, right? How do you actually democratize that maybe a little more extensively?
They did have the
Could be
contest where
something.
they had people submitting story ideas, and they picked
Hmm.
the 10 best ones to do full scripts, and the top 3 full scripts to be drawn, or however the numbers. But yeah,
Yeah.
so it could be, I could see something like that where it is people submitting their own Three Worlds, Three Moons, you know, Deuterocanon, and the best ones get incorporated into the ongoing narrative. Kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Again, like, which at this point, what's canon, what doesn't matter. Frankly, like, it really doesn't. It's, I don't know. It's all canon. It's all not, like, outside of the Valor stuff. Okay, so we had to talk about the app part of it, because it's like, it's such a, like, it's similar to the way it's launched, frankly, which is like, we are only going to take the biggest swings. Like, they are.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a topical reference anymore, but Adam Dunn, right? only hit for home runs. Probably there's a far more contemporary baseball player who's doing that now. But it's like, they are hitting a home run or they're going to strike out. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that ambition. I like it existing in comics. And again, like, at the end of the day, there are hundreds of words to be spilled about the investment and the ideas they're trying, but like, none of it changes the fact that this is like a cool as hell new sci-fi universe that like, the scope and the scale of this is endlessly ripe for great comics. It just is.
They're the only ones that took that Substack money and are trying to do something of this scope. You
Of this
know,
nature, absolutely.
yeah,
I mean, the only ones in comics. I mean, where else is any? Actually, it's funny. I just caught up. I finally finished Black Hammer last night. Ironically, I read Black Hammer Reborn and Black Hammer The End, and that was an actual earnest attempt to do a superhero universe. Its scope is nothing compared to Three Moons, Three Worlds. You know,
right.
well, out again, like, the idea of, like, we're trying to build the next great comics universe. That's that 1991 Jim Shooter Valiant energy that I love, baby. I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Like, that's exciting. I want them to really, to earnestly want that, to be trying that, because I don't even know if there's space for it, but I like creators being like, I don't care if there's space for it. We're gonna do it. That's cool. I hope
Yeah.
they keep pushing on that, I guess, is the thing. You
We
know?
just need the little Stan Lee carnival barker to actually sell us on what's coming, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, maybe, right? I'll message them after this and see if they need me for PR. After earlier in this, I said I don't recommend paying for it. I
Yeah,
probably won't get that good.
you can buy our endorsement subs, Three Worlds, Three Moons.
Oh,
I will
totally.
sell out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All you'd have to do is grant me one interview, I think, and I'd be singing your praises. Okay. I think we did it. I think we covered just about everything. I find it like the most, like, one of the most interesting projects in comics to talk about. And it's kind of disappointing to me that it's not in a healthier place where, just like, more like, where I could, like, recommend more people go check it out. But I would say,
Yeah.
like, if you're listening to this, like, again, sign up for the free trial, get a bunch of the comics. I mean, the Valor's has been free. Like, you can just go read that
Yes.
now. I just don't, for my money, the best experiences have been Foundations, the first couple comics, and the short stories in the source books, because they're really damn good, and they kind of give you a sense of the scope of
Yeah, I would
everything
agree. Yeah.
that is available. I think you're going to have to do the free trial and download those to check them out digitally. And Steven, you're just gonna, or Spike, you're gonna have to hope the postal service comes through, right? What will we
That's
see first? The postal service deliver your projects, or the postal service reunite as a band?
I'm not so sure. We might have to, yeah, organize a hostile takeover of the yeah,
I was
This is the political issue of our time. This will affect who I'm voting for. This
is
affects
getting
everything.
spiked. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Which candidate will get me my three my three worlds, three moons goods? That's the only issue that you need. All right, cool. We haven't said it, but where should people find you? What you got going on? What do you want people to know about?
Yeah, so I write on a blog, spikestonehand.com, or you can get the newsletter updates on diviningcomics.substack.com. I have been writing about just kind of cool things that I like in various comics, but I recently started a reread of The Wicked and The Divine, the creator-owned series from Kieran Gillen, Jamie McKelvey, Matt Wilson, and Clayton Cowles. There's 12 gods that reincarnate in a pantheon every 90 years, and it's a series that has a lot of plot twists and plot reveals as it goes on. So I'm doing kind of a retrospective, spoiler-filled annotation issue by issue, more or less every week going in. So if you want to reread that series with me, I would love that. That's been a lot of fun to go through and read the series, knowing where it all ends up and where all the twists and turns come, and see how much was planned for very early on in these first handful of issues.
And that's a Kieran Gillen endorsed annotated guide for Wicked and Divine, right?
So far, yeah, he did. He mentioned it when the first one dropped in his newsletter. I maybe trying to game the system a little bit, timed it to match the drop of the Power Fantasy, his
smart.
new series. So that was definitely the most traffic that my little humble blog had seen. It was when he linked that in his newsletter. But I've even Jamie McKelvey on Blue Sky told me about some things that I had missed in one issue, and he said that no one had noticed thus far, so I got to include that.
That's cool.
That was kind of cool. Yeah,
I love that. That's one of my favorite questions. If I get somebody whose work I've really dug, like I had this with Matt Kent and Mind Management, like getting to ask them what haven't people caught, and then with Matt Kent and Mind Management, the thing he shared was there's an individual who his power is I think he can drum, or he can he can drum out powers or something. But anyway, he's he did this thing with the panel borders where it's written in Morse code. So it's it mirrors this individual's and he's I don't think anyone noticed. He's I think I really wasted my time. But I was I love those little secrets of the trade type tidbits.
Right. Yeah. This was there's a character who it's unclear as to which of several gods that had the same name he actually is, and there's a hint based off of he has rectangular pupils behind a pair of sunglasses, and just like goats do. And one of these gods, the goat is their divine animal, and so it's just kind of behind the sunglasses. If you look real closely, you can see the pupil shape. Yeah, it was very specific.
That's sneaky.
No one noticed that apparently. Yeah.
Nice. Where's Wicked and Divine for you in terms of all-time favorites? Is that one of your favorites?
It's one of the ones that I first got into. I think I was maybe when I started getting back into reading comics in college, that there was 3 or 4 trades had come out at that point. So I bought all those trades, and then kind of caught up with the series in real time after that. So it definitely was a series that was came out at the right time for me to get back into comics, and of that kind of 2014 or so image boom that we're now 10 years out, when you had East of West and Saga had in full swing, and you're getting Kelly Sue DeConnick like Bitch Planet and Sex Criminals from Zdarsky and Fraction, so that the one that I glommed onto first was definitely The Wicked and the Divine, and it really appealed to that inner mythology nerd in me.
Sure. So. Yeah. I was anyway, my own I wasn't that into it initially, and then when I reread it later and binged it all at once, I was I was a fool. I was a young fool.
I know your co-host is also not the biggest Kieran Gillen fan, so
we don't have to talk about him. We don't have to ruin the mood today with that kind of chatter. I'm gonna turn him around. He's talking about Zach from My Marvelous Year, who notorious just incorrect opinions about Kieran Gillen comics for whatever reason. I'm going to turn him around. That's my goal over the next couple of years on My Marvelous Year. Final note, Mountain Lion says, Postal Service toured last year or 2022, isn't it? So sorry. I think you have already lost. Ben Gibbard and Co.
Ben Gibbard's always been one of my most bitter rivals.
What are your rivals?
Just seeing him win, it's terrible.
Well, one day you'll reach such great heights, but until then, thanks for joining, Spike. I appreciate having you here.
It's great to be here. Yeah.
This was a fun time. This is like my longest live stream. That's how much there. Like that's.
We didn't even talk baseball.
We didn't even go into it. Well, listen, we got the White Sox here. We got minimal baseball.
You're not even a Cubs fan?
No, I am a Cubs fan. I'm just like the White Sox are so bad that it's like
historically bad.
Yeah. I'm like I don't know that I can talk about baseball. I think it's off topic. Yeah. All right, thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate you being here live. Air Harlem says co-host. What other shows do you have? Air Harlem, where you been? I plug My Marvelous Year all the time. Check it out, My Marvelous Year, the only podcast and reading club where we go through the history of Marvel Comics from its origins to today. It's much better than this show, genuinely. Except for today.
One of the best Slack communities. If you subscribe to the Patreon of the My Marvelous Year podcast, you get to join the great Slack community.
Thank you. It's my favorite community in comics, which is what Three Worlds, Three Moons needs. So, all right. We did it. Good job, everybody. Thanks for being here. We will see you next week. Next week is, I think, my From the Ashes special. I think it's going to be the X-Men From the Ashes special with Anna Peppard, a comic scholar who has written for CBH, as well as several less notable places, and Adam Reck of the Comics XF Battle of the Atom podcast. I'm bringing on the experts, if you will. We're going to talk all things X-Men From the Ashes. Spike, you read any From the Ashes?
Absolutely not. No.
Yep.
I think I'm pulling when it comes out the Declan Shalvey Mystique series. That'll be the extent I think of my From the Ashes reading.
I actually think the most interesting series are still to come because it's Storm, Sentinels, and Mystique are actually the three I'm most excited about, and none of those have released yet.
And I'll catch up on them on Marvel Unlimited with the ones that are worth catching up on. But it's not for me.
It's a Marvel Unlimited catch-up kind of thing, but we'll be back next week talking about that. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Appreciate you joining live. Those of you listening, thanks for listening, and enjoy the comics.